Me and but yeah, not the microphone. But yeah, you guys know how you doing, Brady? Bob is not going to be here. He sent an email to. We sent an email. He sent an email to Owen saying that I have his vote, but Owen's not here, so I just have to take my word for it.
He's watching now.
Call this
I
meeting
did
to
notice
order.
he said, "Are you guys on yet?"
Oh, he's not going to be here.
Owen's not going to be here. No, Mike's gonna.
Yeah.
Owen has
I get
has
run
a
show
special town meeting in Thomaston,
Yeah.
South Thomaston for the ambulance.
Mike, yeah, all right.
Did you get that? All right, so what do we got for public comment, anything? Nobody here?
Well, I have a procedural question.
Okay.
I have a few issues I'd like to bring up at some time at the meeting before we get too deep into it, but I don't know where you want to squeeze it in. That's up to you guys. It's nothing major stuff that I think needs to be taken up at a future meeting and talked about, but if we need to get the information out there.
Yeah. Is it something that you want to try to discuss tonight, or just make notes?
Just to discuss as far as the point to state what I know at this point, and it has to do with citizens have come and approached me and asked questions that I can't answer. And in looking at these questions, trying to find answers, I came up to some issues that I think we need to address. And we need to put them on the agenda to be addressed as a group, or appoint somebody to address at some point in time. But the longer we keep putting this off, it'll be, like you said earlier, months before we actually get started on this. Nothing major, take me 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Is there a town update section of the agenda, or?
I have a thing on here, I thought, that said, basically
Update from
just
towns.
general talk thing. But
Director and executive committee.
I thought there
comments and
was
updates.
Yeah,
Wouldn't it fit there?
I would say so.
Right under G?
that would work fine.
Okay, that's fine. I do, this other,
Hold my breath that long, not a problem. That's just what I wanted to do, rather than butt in the middle of somebody else's game,
Okay.
to put it in the right place.
yeah, no, I was looking. I thought there was
Okay.
something, but it's fine. If
will
everybody's
work
fine with
fine.
that, we're good. And is there any other agenda adjustments anybody wants to make to the? There is one thing what did Owen want to talk about?
So Owen,
End up getting that on here.
I don't believe
Oh, it
that
had
that's
to do
been
with the
official.
DEP thing.
Oh, I was going to say the bow hunting thing.
Yeah, and that's on there too, right. Let's see, where would that,
I mean, I do, I think that the schedule of compliance discussion, that, from my understanding, that was
Okay, that's
put
what
on
it
the
actually
agenda
did, yeah.
because of, we thought you were going to be meeting with Paul Gibbons before this meeting, but since that's not happening until Friday, really it doesn't make sense to discuss
Do
this. We
we-
don't have any new updates, and so I would move that we table that until the next board meeting. I think that's what made the most sense, unless you want to get some.
are we all set as far as the wording on that?
No, that's what,
So do we want to discuss that tonight, or are you going to wait till they talk to the lawyer?
I think he was going to wait until, we have all this discussion that happened at many meetings ago. And now, really, Baridi needs to get, up to date with Paul on the issues that Paul, we haven't.
Meet with,
I meet with Paul this Friday at 11 a.m.
did you meet with, what's his name? Is it Bill?
Lou.
Today?
The DEP?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
You did?
On the leachate issue.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I was
but it
going to
wasn't
speak
about
of the consent, the compliance schedule. No, sir.
Okay, all right.
I mean, he
Okay.
gave us a little bit, he said there's enough time
Didn't
to,
even bring a pen.
So, I'm sorry, I'm confused. Are you suggesting that we don't talk about the
Oh,
schedule
I'm
of
just gonna
compliance
whoop,
today?
cross that off.
suggesting that,
Okay, we'll table,
Yes.
yeah, so
Yes.
that Baridi can speak
Okay,
with
so
the
we'll
attorney. I think
table-
Paul does have a really good handle on
table
this.
F then.
so-
Okay.
I think that was the intention of the agenda item initially it was on here because there was hope that we might be able to get a meeting. You would get a meeting with Paul before this, but he wasn't available until
No.
after this meeting, so.
because I was thinking it was kind of hoping we was going to all be able to agree on the wording of it, I thought that, I don't know if they even got a copy of it. Did anybody?
Yes, we have a
We've
copy.
been given a copy of it many
Right,
times.
but I didn't
and-
know if anybody's had a chance to make any adjustments on it yet, or what they wanted to keep or no.
I think we decided last time that Paul was going to look at it.
Yeah.
I thought
And
he was going to give us a draft after he
Yeah,
reviewed
because
it.
was
because
it
he
you,
wanted
you
to-
had one that had notes that somebody had made.
Yeah, actually, these notes were made by Paul, so
Oh, they was?
I
You
actually
found that?
have
Oh, okay.
a
All right.
copy where he has his notes, and I was going to
Okay.
bring this to the meeting.
All right.
Friday to follow up with him.
Okay.
So he has some
Table it
critiques
then.
and some changes here.
I mean, there was, most of it was to make sure that there are things it was in our February meeting.
Yeah.
So the minutes there talk about, there were certain things from the consent decree that we wanted to make sure that, there aren't that many beneficial things for the towns in the consent decree, but there are a couple, and one of them was the obligation for remedial if there's, some kind of catastrophic event in the future, and an earthquake pollutes Lily Pond, then the DEP helps us with 90% of those costs, and things like that, I think didn't end up in the schedule of compliance. And then also just the major thing that was, the DEP was willing to change from my perspective was to eliminate dates from the schedule of compliance.
Right, so the
that
closure dates, right. Yeah,
Instead
okay.
of going to, that by this date, it would just be a final elevation agreed upon, which really, lets us continue to operate.
Okay, so we'll table that till the next meeting then. Has everybody had a chance to read over the minutes? Is there any changes or adjustments anyone wants to make to the minutes?
Yes, yes.
I do.
Can we go page by page, because I have a lot of comments. And so I didn't want to, maybe if we can all just jump in
Yeah.
on page one, kind
Yeah.
of thing. So, my understanding, I do not think I was present at the July meeting.
You weren't, I tried to correct it the last one, and I
And-
guess I screwed it up.
Well, I don't know that you screwed it up, but anyway, and C, David Barrows, yeah, he tried to correct the fact that, that I wasn't present, but it has me as being present. And now it says that we're supposed to be correcting to read that I was present. But it actually read that I was present and needs to read that I wasn't present. And then, of course, it says at the end that I abstained because I hadn't been present. So,
And I
That's
approved it even
backwards.
though I wasn't there, and then I seconded it even though I wasn't there. And that doesn't add up either, so.
right.
Okay.
Now I don't even know what.
All right.
Double negatives and
So
what.
the bottom line is that C should say,
So,
C should say that the motion had included the fact that the July 5th minutes should reflect that I was not present on July 5th.
Maybe you should just say your names, like say it, refer to yourself in the third person, because it shouldn't say I, right?
Well, I think she knows, I'm looking right at her. But yes, the Deborah Hall was not present, okay?
And Dave Barrows was present.
I tried to work that out, I thought I did it right.
And Hall abstained because she wasn't present. That's correct. And, okay, so that, all the
Yeah,
vote is
I
fine.
seconded it,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay, so, I guess,
sorry.
I didn't take those from this one.
okay, page 2. On the committee assignments, I had moved last time, it's under F, committee assignments. I had moved to approve the committee slate, and Karen had seconded it, apparently. And then it said that, that we abstained due to absence. Well, we couldn't have been absent if we moved and seconded. So. And I would like to reflect in G, something that I would kind of made a big deal about at the last meeting, and I'm going to make a big deal about when we get to it in this meeting too, that in my opinion, there is no vote that should be taken on the weighted votes. that the weighted votes are the weighted votes, because they're required to be calculated in a particular way under the interlocal agreement, and there's no vote that should be taken to accept them or not accept them or whatever. So I made that point at the last meeting, which I would like to have reflected in here, because I think it's an important point. Then maybe I think all my points are important. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought that's what we were doing. Don't we usually write it down? Oh, I guess we haven't been because it doesn't show it on here. For a while, I thought we was writing down, like, instead of just the 4-all, it was,
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right, too.
you know.
Does anybody else have page 2 comments? Okay.
I just want to say, I think we changed that process somewhere in the last couple of years to do the weighted vote. I thought maybe,
We should talk about it during.
Right,
the
during that
vote
agenda item,
I'm just talking about the minutes from
Yeah.
last time.
Okay.
I made that point, and I just think that it should be reflected in the minutes.
okay.
I didn't have anything on page 3. Did anybody else? Page 4. The last sentence under Finance Committee, I reminded the board that the Governance Committee, not the Finance Committee, meets prior to the regular monthly board meeting at 5 o'clock in the French conference room. And I didn't do it under the Finance Committee, I did it under the Governance Committee report. So that last sentence should be placed at the end of the Governance Committee paragraph. And it should be changed from Finance Committee to Governance Committee in the sentence. Okay?
We have people commenting on the YouTube live stream, which is not that common. It's kind of side comment, well, nothing negative, just,
I was gonna say, sorry, everybody, but.
no, like, it's,
Okay, and then at the end of page 5, it just said that the next scheduled meetings are 5:30 for the governance committee, but it's actually 5 o'clock, as we just talked about, and as we did today. You know, it says governance, Camden Conference Room, 5:30, September 25th, and it should have said 5. Okay, sorry for all that, but.
Was somebody's paying attention?
comment was, what is the likelihood that there is an earthquake? Seriously, I'm interested. I made that comment about that.
Oh,
Sorry, I won't let myself be distracted by this for long at all, but.
Is there anything else? Does anybody want to make a motion on the amended minutes?
I move to approve the Midco Solid Waste Board meeting minutes for the date of August 28, 2019, as amended.
I'll second it.
Yeah, everybody in favor? All those opposed? Unanimous. Okay, Waste Watch Committee report, is anybody
Yeah, I can,
going to do that?
I can do it. There will be a Waste Watch meeting tomorrow here in this room at 12:30, if anybody's interested. It's going to be an opportunity for Baridi to, I think that's the one you're coming to, right?
Yes.
Yep, to.
And I have their agenda.
Yes, then there's also going to be a discussion of swap shop closing dates for the season, so that every year is kind of something that the volunteers get together with the manager and any other interested parties and discuss when they are thinking of closing. It usually has to do with number of volunteers and the weather and all of that stuff. Then the big thing is the fall roadside cleanups that are coming up. Rockport's cleanup is the September 27th and 28th. And the prisoners, again, are going to be cleaning Route 90 and Route 17 on the 26th and 27th. That's something that Marcy does a great job coordinating every year. Lincolnville's cleanup is scheduled for October 4th and 5th. So there'll be a usually at the Waste Watch meetings, we discuss sharing of these, like the vests that Midco
Yeah.
Solid Waste owns, and then different towns have different signs that we oftentimes need, so that's why we stagger the cleanups. Camden is going to be October 18th and 19th, and a discussion of when Hope wants to do their cleanup is going to happen tomorrow. And their next agenda topic is going to be education and outreach, updating the, possibly updating the informational video that was done so that it includes the information about food waste disposal. And then some back-to-school ideas and we've been doing more coordinating with EcoMaine and having them come into some of the schools and trying to be the liaison to, when there are interested teachers, making sure that they link up, they know that, EcoMaine is a resource, and I think they've been to a couple of the schools. So if anybody has anything that everybody's certainly welcome to attend the meeting if you want something specific communicated there. Feel free to let me know, either right now or if something comes to you throughout the meeting. And that's it.
Move on to E, state the weighted votes for fiscal year 2020.
Dun, dun, dun. Deb.
Did you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, that's, yeah.
All right. So, okay, we all know that, not everybody is happy with the weighted votes, but we know that our interlocal agreement and our bylaws, as they stand right now, required weighted votes. So we're stuck with weighted votes as they are now. And then and both documents then set forth in detail how we calculate the weighted votes, and there is no room for discretion on that. So I don't believe that it's appropriate for us to take a vote on the weighted votes. We just, in my view, which you guys may not agree with, but in my view, I think that we need to have someone tell us how they did the weighted votes, assure us that they were done in accordance with the wording that's in the interlocal agreement, and then they are what they are. I mean, there's nothing, I think, for towns to, for directors to vote yay or nay on, just to assure ourselves as a board that they were appropriately calculated. But anyway, that's my piece.
But to me, see, I think it's dysfunctional because basically my vote don't count. It takes, no matter what, I'm never going to be able to get a yes vote unless I convince you guys somehow to go our way if we have a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying, and the last time we tried to do this, and I don't know, there again, I haven't looked into it as far as, like we was talking about earlier. I think that just an equal vote at this table, I think all 4 towns should have an equal vote at the table. The financial thing, we're not looking to change any of that at all. The way the valuations are, that's fine, and I believe somehow in the interlocal agreement, that's where that's gonna have to be changed, because I believe the way it's wrote in there now, that's how the whole weighted vote things work. It's on the evaluation and what you've got for a say. And I know, most of the time, this board's pretty good. I mean, we have unanimous votes. I mean, we do work good together. But there's some financial issues that, like the town of Hope, really can't afford. And if everybody else is for it, the town of Hope's not, it puts them in a hard spot. And that's what I wanted, and I'm not about changing any, if we can, maybe, I don't know, maybe we can't change anything there. But at this table, I would like to have an equal vote, and I think it would be beneficial to all the towns to have that. And I don't know how to go about it. I mean, with the interlocal agreement and all that, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that's involved. But we also had an issue with, I don't know why, I know the evaluations changed, so they went down, the votes changed, but technically, like, the amounts changed. I don't know if all the other towns did or not, but like, we had already budgeted for amount this year, and then we've got did you say that paper, Wendy?
I think we all got a notice, didn't we?
Because I didn't bring it, yeah, it was highlighted in yellow, but it changed.
Yeah, they all did. I mean, I heard from Bill Post
So,
today.
but we've already, so what do you do? I mean, you've got to go change, you're going to have a special town meeting to ask for money to change it.
That's another issue as to why all of a sudden the bills we were sent in essence have changed, but I think that's a different issue, and I
But
don't
is
know
it,
what
I don't know,
it
I mean,
is.
how did it come all about? Just because of the new, looking at the weighted vote
Changes every
thing?
year.
I can
You can
maybe
help
shed
explain.
shed
Okay.
a little bit of light. The initial assessments that went out, that looked like this without the red,
Yeah,
were calculated on using a previous version of the budget, not the budget that was approved by this board. When that became obvious to people paying the bills, we said, this doesn't match up with the budget.
Yeah.
If you look at the financials,
Is that in our packet, that document there?
this,
That-
I don't
yeah.
think so.
Can I, I don't
You
think, I
have
haven't
that.
seen that, thank
I
you.
only know because I'm
And
manager told us to.
So
no, Sam had one last night at the meeting.
the new assessments are not new, they're the correct assessments.
Okay, so the one they got
And-
originally was not correct.
Contained an error because we were using the wrong percentages, I think, or the wrong budget or both.
Budget.
Wrong budget, thank
Okay.
you. So with the corrected budget, I mean, when we, in Lincolnville, budgeted for Midcoast Solid Waste, we fortunately used the correct budget that had come from Midcoast or Jody or somebody. So I would check your bottom line. So what happened with the assessments is they looked to make an adjustment in the second quarter to make up for what was either overbilled or underbilled in the first quarter. But the bottom line number for the year on that assessment sheet matches up with what this board approved for a budget whenever you did it.
Okay,
That makes any sense.
lots of sense, thank you.
So going back to your point, Mike, I understand why, your concerns and why you'd rather see an equal vote. And I get it,
Yeah.
and I get it. But all I'm saying is that the interlocal agreement requires us to do weighted votes, and our bylaws require us to do weighted votes. And while we can change our bylaws, this board can change our bylaws, we can't change the interlocal agreement unless we take that back to our towns and all 4 towns vote in favor of
Right,
changing.
but
the
it would be on
interlocal.
us to develop, to take it back. We've got to come up with a plan of why we want to do it, I get that.
Yeah, so.
But that's what I was after. I wanted to
Yeah.
do that. And I think it's up to us to create, and then go back to the towns of why we want to do it.
So can I take what the governance committee discussed today a little bit out of
Yeah.
order on the agenda in
Oh,
order
yeah.
to address this? So what we're doing on the governance committee is to identify those things in the interlocal agreement and in the bylaws that one or more towns don't agree with, don't like, would like to see change, or just efficiencies that make sense, like the requirement that 2 town managers be here or whatever to have a quorum. Or, just different things and so then what we're gonna do is we're going to then not take a weighted vote within our committee or anything. We're going to say, these towns support, when, we'll develop the issues first.
Yeah.
Then, after the development of the issues, which is going to take us another meeting to finish that, we've identified like 12 issues today, and there will be more at the October meeting. And then the next step is to take bite-sized pieces of those, take those issues and start discussing them substantively, and then reporting those up, either in mass or bite-sized pieces to the board, so that the board can then discuss and then take a vote, or,
Yeah.
on what they want to pursue changes on or not, right? And so that's the process we've identified, and certainly the weighted vote is one of those 12 topics that we're going to take up. And we will report to the board options that we think, that the board might want to think about. I mean, maybe there's some kind of hybrid in there, something that we can come up with. I kind of noodled around some hybrids. I'm not saying that I, as Rockport, would support it or not. I'm just, saying that there are some possibilities of hybrids in there. So anyway, But that's a process that's gonna take us over like the next year to identify issues, discuss issues, bring them up to the
Yeah.
board.
I know the
vote.
biggest thing last time was the evaluations got brought up, because basically it sounded like people were thinking that Hope wanted 25%, and everything's going to change. That wasn't it. We just wanted an equal vote at this table.
Yeah.
And, and I don't know how to go about doing that. That's what we want to try to work on is changing the vote part of it from the evaluation. I mean, that's all fine. We don't have a problem with what we're paying or nothing,
Yeah.
but it's just basically low man on the totem pole. Technically, we've got no say in what goes on here.
Well, so I hope that
And-
process is a process that you and the rest of the board believes makes sense and
Yeah.
is a systematic sort of process to look at overall recommended changes, potentially to the
Yeah.
interlocal agreement.
No, and I'm open, because, to me, I don't understand why every town wouldn't want that. Even Rockport or Lincolnville, why wouldn't you want an equal vote in what,
Because we represent
So-
more, I sympathize with like the awkward dynamic that it creates here, the weighted votes, but it's also used, the school districts have to do that comes up all over the place. And you have to figure out a way of allocating, some of us represent more people than others. And so, Camden pays more of the bill, and there are more people in Camden. So I think it was, there has to be some system, sometimes it's like the Senate and Congress, Senate and the House of Representatives. Sometimes you send more delegates. You could say, well, the towns that are bigger, for every 100 people, you get one delegate, or 500 people, you get one delegate. But there has to be a way of making it so that more, the decisions that affect more people, those people have more say. And to say that Hope wants to pay 8% of the bill and have 25% of the say, that in and of itself won't work. It feels like we did go around to the towns. Owen spent all that time going around to each of the select boards, and I think or at least a majority of the select board said it wasn't something that they could, changing only the percentages for the weighted vote part wasn't something that was tenable. I would love to see more of a representative, like instead of assigning weights to people's votes, you'd have more delegates from places with more people, because it wouldn't be so, weighting the vote is a kind of strange thing. But to
that's a
Deb's
hybrid,
point, this
yeah.
is, the real thing, we can't change any of that here. The only way is to get, all 4 of the select boards to agree to put that out. So, this board would have to recommend to the select boards that a change be made to the interlocal agreement. And then all 4 of the select boards would have to agree, yeah, this looks good, and then put that out to their legislative bodies, and then have it be voted on by everybody. So that's what each of us feels right now about that system is just irrelevant. It's like the select board deciding they want to change something with the school right now. We don't want to sign off on the school budget. Well, once in a while we say we're not going to vote yes on the school budget, and it doesn't, legally it just doesn't work out. There's no mechanism for one board to say, we just don't have that power to vote no on that system we've agreed on. I still like that personally, I don't agree with Deb that we shouldn't have it. I do think it makes sense every year to have this, not this, but the thing in our packet that says this is what this year, looking at the formula, and ideally we would show the math, so that every year we're looking at it and saying, okay, yeah, we've updated the valuations, we've updated this, we've updated, if it's a census year, we've done the population, and we've agreed that the accounting has been done right, so that I'm imagining that it could happen where you get to the end of the year and a town just says, well, hey, my Camden we shouldn't have been 42%, we should have been 43%, or we should have been this. And then we'd go back and realize, oh, we forgot to calculate the population evaluation formula correctly. So I think there's merit in that coming before the board every year and saying, okay, has this been done correctly? Is this are these the percentages that we're going to be using for the ongoing budget? Or, and then by all of us, it could just be presented, but then, as I think you're suggesting, but then where's the mechanism for us all to have said, well, we agreed? You can say, well, it was presented, and then we can argue about, well, but we never agreed that was right, or that there's just, it's very much a procedural thing, like, yeah, that was
Do you have something you wanted to add,
allocated
Dave?
correctly.
When Allison's done,
Okay.
just so you all know, this is a copy of the budget that you all approved.
Yeah.
The last page in here is the town assessment calculation, which has all the valuations, all the populations, figures out all the percentages, which match the sheets in your packet, which match the numbers on the bottom of your assessment that Allison just took from me.
You gave it to me.
I didn't.
Hers now, buddy.
I know,
You said I could have
I can print off another one.
No, I'm
So
trying to
you
take something from a
do,
girl.
you do see this on an annual basis when the manager and the finance committee present, or the manager presents a budget draft. This calculation sheet will all be figured out, and at some point, we'll have 2020 census numbers, but not till 2021 probably.
And we approved that document.
And you approve this document, which is where all this stuff
Right. Yeah.
comes
It's
from.
the one, shouldn't we be doing it for the subsequent budget that we're coming up with? Because,
Well, this
This, are you
budget
saying-
is for fiscal year '21. These weighted votes, although it says
1920, that's
Sorry,
now-
this is for fiscal year '20,
Yeah.
which matches up with this.
So shouldn't we be doing it for the next year? Because we already approved that budget, so there's certainly no going back now.
Right, well, they match. And when you do the next budget, the next,
Shouldn't we vote on this before we
No.
vote on it going into the budget?
there's no vote.
I get that there's no vote,
I
but
agree with what Deb says. It is what it is. This was what the towns decided on back whenever they approved the interlocal agreement. What you need to do
it's verified
is
at budget time,
check to make sure that,
at budget time.
right,
Yeah, okay.
and it's,
We should just do it at
I mean,
budget time. That makes
yeah,
lots of sense.
yeah.
Okay.
Because the
That
budget
was
is
our
for the
opportunity.
upcoming year, and then as July 1, when the budget's implemented, then the votes change based on,
Yeah, that makes perfect
calculation.
sense. We should be doing it at budget time. And we do usually. We do
Yeah.
usually have that conversation at budget time.
yeah,
I
you
mean,
need
if we
to,
forget
because in
some-
the end, that's the assessment
Yep,
that you all are passing on to your 4 communities.
yep. I
And
totally
so in
agree.
order to pass on the appropriate assessment, you need to have done the calculation hopefully appropriately.
So I think that the statement of these weighted votes and a page that we can take off and we can put into our binders to know what our weighted vote is every time we take a vote, right?
Yeah.
Is necessary for us to know. My only point is that we shouldn't be taking a vote on it for the reasons that.
Yeah, and we do take a vote on it when we do the
It's
budget.
part of the budget.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, you've convinced me.
Anything else? We'll move on to Director and Executive Committee comment. Be you.
No, Director, I think director is us. That would,
Oh, okay.
that's,
He's the next one.
he's the manager.
Either way. he can
We are
go first or I can
directors.
go first.
Okay.
He's the manager.
Director of Executive Committee, okay. Sorry, excuse me.
That was a test.
I had a couple of citizens at large from the various towns come and see me at work this week, and I did a little bit of research from their questions at me, and I came up with some stuff that I think we need to address that. First one is just a plain, simple question. The contractor bags that they can bring into the dump, and you can put a sticker on them. How much does that sticker cost?
So there's no sticker. It's just
Or how much do they have to pay for that bag?
$5 for one of the big,
And when did we make that change?
it was based on and Beth, if somebody else is better to answer, feel free to tell me I'm not the appropriate person, but it's calculated
Change was made
when we changed the per bag fees.
when we
May
changed
1st.
the price of the MSW.
And the gatehouse has been charging $5 since that point.
Yes, they were 4, and now they're 5.
The only reason I'm asking is I had a customer who I've known for 30 years coming in and out of the store swear up and down that 2 weeks ago when he put his black bag in, he paid $4 for it, and he was charged $5 this time, and he came in quite ballistic and wanted to know why the blank, we changed it without telling anybody. I mean, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but I found other problems while I was going into this, but this was the start of my little episode. So I put that in the back of my notes. I just figured you guys could tell me. So that's been, officially it's been going on. And as far as we know at this table, $5 has been charged since a year ago, basically,
Yes.
when we passed it. Okay. Because I need to call these people
But
up
they
and
can
talk
also
to them.
go over the scale, if they, just, it might be that a contractor bag
All
is,
black contractor bags.
With not going over the
Pickup
scale.
truck, it was not weighed.
Yep.
So that.
Right.
I had another customer right after them, in the same 2-day period, come in and complain about our mattress prices, which we have all talked about here, and the way we're doing things. And after I talked to him, he wasn't mad at why we were doing it. He didn't think it was right. And his way of dealing with it is he also owns land and has use of Belfast dump system, and he went up there and took them up there. He didn't leave them at our facility, he took them to their facility. We charged $65 for a mattress and box spring, I believe. That's what he told me, we've got it written in here, which I think was $35, it'd be $70, but it's in the same ballpark. He took it up there, same day, went through there, they weighed it, drove in, drove out. They put it in a dumpster, not into their landfill or wherever they're going. They put it into a dumpster. They charged him $14 and change. My question with that is, would we be ahead of the game to take one of our old dumpsters? If they can get rid of it for $14, maybe we should look into, should we be doing this too? Then maybe, and what else could we throw in that same dumpster that maybe we could get out of our pile that, I mean, I understand that the main problem with mattresses is the dozer wraps itself up in it, and it creates a hassle for the pile. Well, if we can get those things
you
out of the
start
pile
fires too.
and not cost us that much more, would it be worth the space it takes to keep it and to ship it off once in a while, and we'll find somebody to take it and all that stuff? But it might, for that price difference, it might be worth looking into.
I agree. I agree.
I mean,
They won't take a full
these
load of
were just
mattresses, though.
two things. The third thing I came up with on this was I got real smart, which gets me in trouble usually. I said, well, hell, I know, I can go answer both these questions, and both guys have talked to me a couple of times this week because they're regulars. I see them often. And I said, okay, I can get them their answers before Wednesday night's meeting, so I can be smart and solve all this. So I went on to our website, and I got
Oh,
a
yeah,
shock at that point, and that was my third thing I wanted to bring up tonight. To my knowledge, Jim Guerrero is no longer manager of Midco Solid Waste, and one of the websites has him listed as manager.
You're going to say it was not functional. It's not working.
Well, if
That-
you try to go to Midco Solid Waste, just straight up, it's Chinese or whatever, but if you go through the towns, the respective
Right.
towns, it takes you to the
Like the
last
pages
version
of
of
it.
it.
Oh.
And it has the previous manager and all of that, so it may be advantageous for the towns to get that off their website until we can get Midco Solid Waste up and running.
That has, I think, to do with cookies too. I think you have to, when you change something, you have to like.
I usually have to change my shirt after I eat cookies.
No, I mean, refresh, like even when we had the last, we were.
Yeah, but why do we have so many issues with our website? It's the larger,
Yeah.
why is that down? I mean,
We
it
told the IT
happens all the
guy to do
time.
it, but he was
Really?
there working on
we have a
computers.
lot of issues with the website company.
Is it really
And it
Chinese,
has
is that what
been
you're saying?
updated by comments,
Yeah.
but I-
Well, no,
You go
it's
to the web address, it just comes up all garble, it looks Chinese.
Well, it was
Me.
offline. It was,
Chinese, but.
I don't know if I would call it Chinese so much
All I'm
as,
saying is that somebody.
Well, I don't know a
somebody
foreign
may
language, so
have-
that's what I said.
Somebody may have copped our URL.
here's what happens for me. To me, it's very English, but just not useful.
Okay.
That's one version you can get, depending on where you get at it, you can get other versions.
So I forward that to the IT.
You.
It
But-
was working last Friday because I was going to put information on and we were glitching, but I know that, I got a call early this morning that it was not.
I've been told early on in the week. The fact remains, it continues to happen, that we have problem. I mean, I would say that
Oh, my gosh.
we would ask
It is Asian.
manager,
If you're hacked and you looked at Mid-Coast Solid Waste recently, and then we fix it, like we fix the problem.
Right, cookies,
you-
yeah.
Your computer at home is gonna retain that old link. You have to
Oh,
refresh. Not
cookies.
everyone does that.
it's the website company. It's the website company.
And this time, I don't know why it's down, we have that odd message, so.
It's not, it should be the website company figuring it all out. I do see the Chinese now.
Dave does come up with Chinese on here now.
In the search results, yeah.
In the search results. My only point here is that
Yes.
we could have been hacked because I actually own a technology company. Don't consider myself a technologist, but I do co-own a technology company. And I know that, that is an indication that our URL has probably been hacked. So we need to pay particular attention to this, and we also need to make sure that the towns do something to protect themselves as well, because I could see where the towns again, I'm not the technologist, and so probably all those techies out there are saying, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, and they're right. But it might be that cookies are working in our favor when you go through the town, because you're still getting what you used to get through the town, okay? But this definitely has to be addressed.
I think it is,
Right away.
something's wrong, because I have updated, but, we'll double check.
A different company.
No, that's not a
There are so
problem.
many people that have websites and some that just do not suffer this type of problem. That it's very common for our website to have problems, and it's been continuous. And that there are sometimes when you just have to break ties with the,
Oh,
You know.
we shouldn't, yeah.
it just needs to be reevaluated. RFP.
So that basically was what I had, my bad news that I wanted to throw at everybody. Sorry, but that.
No, I like that. That was good.
$2.3 million corporation, we ought to be able to have the guy sit at the, on his way in to go through the gate on his little phone, be able to figure out about how much he's gonna pay a ton, or how much he's gonna, which is where I was going on the website to try to find out. And I figured I could just call these people up and say, oh, I just went to the website, it changed this and this and this, I'll find out the dates for you at the meeting.
So
But this is what
frustrating.
They say now, well, I can't read, my daughter can read Japanese, but I can't, and she isn't here, so I can't ask her. Sorry.
You went to the website instead of just saying, you just go to our website and that'll tell you everything.
No, I went for them, and
That's-
then I was gonna call them back. and that
Then
didn't
you would have
work.
really had some, you know.
So that's the end of my bad news. Thank you.
Anything else? Any updates or anything? All set?
Really, you get nothing?
Nothing.
Come on.
Yeah, when did we last
I
meet?
know, you're awful quiet here tonight.
I'm here for the long haul.
Okay,
Thank
now
you
we'll
too
move
for
on to
being
your
here so we could
manager's
have a
report
meeting.
then.
Let's, that is one of the things that we really are looking into. We should keep track of which town
You've got your
managers.
30 days in, now you can
come
give us
the
an
most.
update.
Yes,
That's not fair. We
I'm
haven't
just
had
kidding.
You get like a prize at the end of the year.
Like an extra little, like a deduction on your assessment or something if your town manager comes the most.
You get to dump one mattress.
Right, we all get a free yellow bag.
Yeah.
okay. Well, good evening, Vice Chairman, esteemed board, to everybody. There are a few things that we've done since the last time I was here to address you. I've been in place now 30 days as of September 16th. So enough time now to make a few changes, and just going to run through a couple of updates for the board's information very quickly. We did make some changes in case any of your citizens, customers, friends, neighbors asked this question. We did remove the metal container and the demo container from the entrance into the transfer station. I found them to be somewhat of an attractive nuisance, so to speak, as it relates to few individuals, very, very few, maybe 3 to 4, that were coming in several times each day to what is referred to as picking, but what we call scavenging of the metal out of the containers. The concern that I had is, one, their safety and the fact that Midcoast could be tacitly complicit in that we have a sign that says no picking, but we don't enforce it. So there seems to be a tacit approval that it's okay. There is a liability issue associated with that. If someone were to go in and stick their hand in that sharp angle iron and cut their hand, we would have some liability issues. Second,
Can I ask you a quick question? So where are people supposed to put their, if you're driving in and I have like just a small item for the landfill, what do I do now?
we have 2 other metal container boxes.
Not metal, but a landfill item. Oh, metal, the container box is metal, is what you're saying? Not a container box for a metal.
Metal used to be up front.
Okay, yes, I'm talking about the red metal container where we collect, people bring us scrap metal.
Okay, I'm
And
asking
we
about
we
landfill
collect it
items,
at these smaller containers, and then we load it into the larger roll-off, and it's hauled to a scrap yard.
Okay, I'm not asking about scrap metal, though. I'm asking about if I had a bag full of leaves or a broom or any of the smaller items that used to
Oh,
go.
the demo items.
Yes.
Yes, we're directing those people to go to the landfill.
So I guess I strongly disagree with, there are lots of people that come in with little items that are meant for the landfill. And if you start having every single one of those people have to, just because they've got a bag of leaves, drive to the top of that landfill, that's just too, we've normally, because that's a liability in and of itself, letting people drive into that landfill. It's usually been the big, if you have a big load of stuff, the contractors or whatever, they go up into the landfill, but we don't want every, person with a rug, for instance, or lots of times there are these little items that it's just much safer for everybody because there's a high volume.
Isn't there still another smaller container down by the recycling bins?
Yes, and there's one
For demo?
at the, no, not for demo, nothing for demo.
For demo,
For
the issue
metal.
is demo.
There's one recycling, and there's another metal down at the compacting area.
We can't
But there's
have
none for
every
demo.
citizen that's doing yard work driving into maybe there's something I'm missing to this, but I feel uncomfortable with a lot of people pop tires and.
Well, I can maybe
The
finish
demo
explaining
part
my justification.
So
Okay, I didn't realize there was.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'll
I don't
follow up
want to
afterwards.
be, I don't want to be controversial here, but, I would like to suggest that it might be, if the board has operational concerns or opinions, then I think we should, it's fine to express those, but we hired Baridi to be the facility manager who's supposed to be responsible for the day-to-day operations of the facility. And I just hope that we don't get into the second-guessing every decision he makes. And to take this board's time to do the second-guessing.
I mean,
of
maybe
every
you
decision
don't go
he
there
makes.
a lot,
I do.
but.
I do.
Well,
I
let's
mean,
save
I have to do
that.
something with my waste.
Let's just save that. Let's
Finish
hear.
this. Let's
Yeah,
let him
let him
finish
I
it.
thought he was moving on to a next item, not.
Go-
Let him
yeah.
explain why he's
Right.
done it.
Okay.
Let's.
Well, it became somewhat of a bottleneck too for traffic. The people who would stop to open their trunks and put something small in the demo, as well as in the metal containers, were parked or in an area where when vehicles were coming off, mostly commercial, larger, off the scale to come back to the gatehouse to pay, we had a lot of pileup of vehicles. I've observed this now for 30 days, and I had some concern about the fact that we had several parked vehicles bottlenecking right there at the beginning and entrance into the line going towards the recycling. The other thing that I mentioned to the board at Hope last night is that it's my intention to purchase an electromagnet, not a passive magnet where we just pull, but an electromagnet powered by an engine that actually creates an electromagnetic field and urges the metal materials towards a magnet, the same type that are used on runways at airports. I think that would be more aggressive and a better way to pull nails and things from the roads, which is a responsibility that all landfills should have and take on. That is something that we should be doing, and I'm gonna have staff assigned to pull that magnet all through the facility. The other reason for removing those two locations is the demo box was being picked from as well. So people were scrapping or scavenging from the demo as well as the metal right at the front. And we had no real way to have staff to come in and approach those customers to say that that is not allowed. The two containers for metal that we have left on site are convenient to the employees and our customers, but what makes them convenient to the employees is that they were right there where they're working the line and can approach that customer. The two that was up front, there was no way to staff or oversee those containers.
But that's only metal, right? There's no.
For demo as well.
There's
For demo as well. So
a small bin for demo also?
wasn't that
I understand that you feel that the problem is both demo and metal, but I'm asking, I'm understanding that the metal containers have just been moved to their ours, but their demo now, the only way to get rid of anything demo is to drive fully into the landfill?
That is correct. That is correct. And as I explained to my staff and also to my administrative coordinator, Beth, is that we want to find out what the impacts would be and just determine whether or not we're having issues with traffic or we're having issues with complaints. So far, we haven't had any complaints or anyone come to the office or make any phone calls or any blowback so far. So just quietly did that, and we're just going to see. But I can tell you what I hoped to eliminate it has been eliminated. We have much more room, and there's a better egress and ingress, or egress going into the ingress going into the facility without all of the cars. And the vehicles that are parked to go back to the gatehouse to pay, most of them are pulling trailers. The big trucks, dualies, pulling trailers, and now they have an additional space. No one is taking up that space for parking, none of the staff. So it's open, and it's the first time I understand it's been open in probably a decade or more. So that's one advantage. And again, just the issue with trying to explain to the customers that when they remove the metal, which has the most value, they're taking a commodity from mid-coast that we actually generate a revenue from. So when they come in and pick and take it and put their cars and then take it off-site and sell it for their own benefit, then in effect, they're taking our commodity and being opportunistic and selling it and making money for themselves. And then we have less revenue that we can generate from the scrap metal provider that provides the larger containers and is expecting to make a little more money on the scrap metal that we get brought in there at no cost. So it's diversion, yes, from disposal, but we do want to get as much of the revenue as possible. And that was one thing that the picking was interfering with. So that was another reason for eliminating those two locations. Now, we do have two other metal containers, and we have the larger one over there at the brush area. We even had people who would come in and go to the larger container and try to climb down in it to pick. And of course, that's very dangerous. So the employees have been told that when they see that, get on the radio call, get someone to approach that person, and that person, whoever that is, including myself, and I'll approach these people and try to get them to stop. And of course, some of these people didn't even live in the four towns. One individual in particular lived in Rockland and told me that he subsidized all his, because he's on disability, and that's how he subsidized his income. Was taking all our scrap metal. The other thing is, again, I wanted to minimize any concerns as it relates to liability insurance. So I'll jump to the next one. Any more questions or comments on those first two?
The only comment I would make is that with the landfill items, it's when people take things from the demo bin there, it's saving space in the landfill. And oftentimes swap shop volunteers, as part of their process, they go up and they grab things like brooms and rugs. And, very often somebody will set something like, antique furniture right next to there, and it can be grabbed by and moved to the swap shop. It can be, and those things are all things that people have paid to bring in, but then they end up not taking up space in our landfill. So it's just a different, I just see the demo as a very different situation than the metal. And we don't need, I don't need to belabor it, and I understand that. I do think it's within your authority to make those operational decisions. I just want to provide that feedback that, I am concerned with the number of increase of people actually driving into the landfill, and then the missed opportunities for saving things that people have paid for.
Well, I've taken that into account as well, but we have a conflict going on. As you just mentioned, Director, that we have people who will come in and pay to dispose of their demo. And if they have a small amount, they would stop at that container and put it in there, keep them from going up on the landfill. Understood. Then we have the citizens who come to the transfer station to donate to the swap shop. So they're not paying for it, and they're taking it down. So it's demo, but they have identified it, not us, but they've identified it as a donation to the swap shop. And then that ends up going in a landfill, and we receive no revenue.
But so you're not preventing that by taking away the demo bin. People are always going to drop things off.
Well, what I'm trying to point out here is that there's a conflict there where demo is being scavenged and diverted, as you mentioned, and there may be some beneficial reuse. Another man or woman's trash is another person's treasure, but it's paid for. And then the people who decide that they don't want to pay for the demo and put it in that small bin, they take it back to the swap shop and they donate it, and it's free. And they determine what its value is for diversion. So at the end of the weeks, we have a issue where we have a certain amount of that material going back into the landfill, not in fact being donated.
That's why we were implementing the system where people actually had to take something to the swap shop. You actually have to pay for it, as though it's going to be, if you want to take a couch to the swap shop, you have to pay.
Yeah, I understand that's where we want to go, and hopefully after we talk tomorrow, we can do that, because
they have been doing it. I mean, we don't, I agree with Deb that this is something that we talked about on the side, and.
We charge for everybody.
We charge for large items going to the swap shop. Anything large coming in that people identify to us and say this is, say, a couch or a chair or a large bureau, we are taking funds for that. We have a stamp, there's a stamp for that.
But not all items.
Stamp for that for the.
Yeah, no, what I've observed as I've been there is that there are things that
Well, sometimes
come in.
people stop to tell you they're going to the.
Right. But
Yes.
keep in mind that people really do love the swap shop, and
Okay.
This is all just good feedback, and for
Yes.
you to continue to
Okay.
work with.
As I said earlier, as it was said at the onset, I will be meeting with Attorney Givens to discuss the SOC this Friday at 11 a.m., and I'll have some information on that. One other thing, a point of interest for the board information, is that our bathroom remodel that was approved by the board prior is due to begin October 15th. The full expenditure for the bid was $4,825.20. This includes a complete rehab of the flooring, walls, and a replacement of the toilet. I believe the sink is staying in place. And according to the bid, they will be there a week, possibly two. But that work will begin finally October 15th. And that's the restroom that serves the staff in the MRF, or the recycling building. So it's finally going to get rehabbed. Second, since Rockland has closed its landfill and is no longer baling corrugated cardboard, I've been approached by third parties with an interest to bring their cardboard to Midcoast. And this includes cardboard collected in Rockland, outside of Rockport, Camden, Maine, and Lincolnville. And they want to bring it to Midcoast at no cost to us, in the sense that we don't pay them for it, for clean OCC or old corrugated cardboard, but there would be a cost for us for handling it and processing it. And we're supposed to be able to take that increased volume, sell it at our own profit, and that's how we make money, by them bringing it in. Casella, Pine Tree, I was approached about them wanting to bring 2 to 3 tons of OCC collected from Camden, Rockport, Rockland, once a week, on Friday in the morning, 2 to 3 tons that they promise is clean. But that's something I wanted to just sort of broach at this to give sort of a heads up. But I want to do a little more research on that. Even our broker, Victor Horton from MRRA, has asked if we're willing to take cardboard from Fisher Engineering, the company that makes the snow removal equipment. And that would be great cardboard. But you know, that's another burden that we haven't determined what the full impact of action would be on our staff, our baler, our warehouse, trucking to do all that. And Beth has told me that we've been approached by even other towns, Islesboro and Northport, and about possibly accepting their cardboard. So that's something that I need to get more information on before I bring it to the board about their consideration as to whether or not it's something we want to do. And I'm just speaking about it now in case anyone has gotten any talk, or anyone has said anything about the fact that Midcoast won't accept it or may be willing to accept it.
I do have a question on that. I've heard about that. I had a conversation with a guy who actually processes the cardboard at Fisher's, and their challenges with getting rid of it. Is there a market for that?
Yes.
And if so, how do we process that to maximize the market?
Well, I can tell you that since Victor is our broker,
Yeah.
He's already assured us that if we were to take all the cardboard from Fisher, we wouldn't even have to bale it. They just want a place to bring it. And we.
What would we do with it?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, I'll let you finish.
Well, I'm just, there may be some history to it, but this is,
What would we do with it after, if we didn't bail it?
it would come in baled.
Oh,
They have their own, I'm sorry, should have said that. They have
Their
their own
own
baler.
baler.
Yeah, the guy,
Oh.
they process it there, and they just look for somebody to take it.
I'm sorry, yes.
I'm sorry, I should
Yeah,
have said that.
it would come in pre-baled, and we would just take it, they would deliver it, transport it, it'd be baled, it'd be clean.
And we'd sell it.
And we just sell it.
What a deal.
Okay.
Okay, it's just that,
just
I
like, yeah.
haven't spoken to him yet about what the volumes would be, what the tonnage, how often, the frequency, whether we have the space, how frequent could we expect to have a semi-tractor trailer come and haul. Just like today, Casella was supposed to come and pick up probably 19 skids, about 26 tons of OCC.
oh, they're going to buy it too?
Well, that's who buys all our.
Casella does?
Yes.
Oh,
And
so
that-
they want to bring it to us?
No, Casella buys it all, but they wanted to come and pick up what we have and transport it. Victor was sending them. He contracts with them. They agree to come and pick it up at no freight to us, and then they go and sell it, and then we get the profit.
So
That's about $30 a ton, is that right?
You're
Beth?
saying Casella is our buyer for corrugated cardboard?
Look, Beth probably could speak to that a little better
They're
than
our
I can.
second middleman. They purchase
So if they,
and ship to Canada.
and I didn't know Casella was involved in that. Would they agree
Price
to?
of the shipping into the price that
Yeah,
they
yeah.
pay us, but basically back, this price was from, it was recent, I don't know when it was sold, we shipped it out in August, and the price was $30 a ton. I know that cardboard has gone down to, I think it's 26, 22.
That's an interesting thing. So they want to bring us, they're one of the ones that wants to bring us stuff to bale.
Full freight line
And then would they guarantee
Well,
buying it back from us too at a?
Yes, so that was what I explained, that if we were to enter into this, if I were to approach the board and they were possibly going to entertain accepting generated material outside of the 4 towns, because what I was explaining is that Rockland is not subsidized to help subsidize our operation.
Right, I
So in
understand
effect, they would get it, the advantage with actually really supporting it. They pay our gate fees, they pay all that, but there's no assessment that they pay.
But if it's enough of a revenue generator for us, then it could offset.
And it's not. It's
Okay.
never going to really be, well, I shouldn't say never. It isn't currently, and we don't see that it's going to remain flat before it starts to go back up. There was a time you get $400 a ton for OCC, but now, as Beth mentioned, $24, $26, $30. And they do factor in what their transportation costs are. But one thing I would like to do when I meet with Victor, I plan on attending a conference in November and meeting all of the people and talking about what the industry is in Maine, and whether or not anyone has agreements where they factor in what the transportation costs are. They can be described, they can be measured, and they can be evaluated. And that way we don't have it just open-ended that they go and sell it, we get $30 a bale when they may be getting 60. And they're just saying, well, the reason you're only getting half is because, it costs us this much.
Transportation, yeah.
No, all that, you can do something with all that. But I just wanted to bring it, just sort of broach it, that we are being approached because Rockland is not willing to invest in their baler and invest in doing this. And we're basically the only game in town. And that would change things a little
Rockland
bit.
went to single stream.
Yes, they did. And
they're
that's what
still
makes
taking
us so
cardboard.
valuable. We're still dual stream. Our material is very clean and very desirable, and that's why we're able to get the money we're getting for it, because we don't have contamination. Our bales are average about 2,300 pounds, or 2,300 pounds, and they're large, they're clean, and they're desirable. There's a market. Single stream, well, that's a whole another issue. So that's a testament to the quality of the product that we have. And that's why I think that's the bargaining, and that's another reason why people want to bring it. And they're talking about bringing at least Casella from containers that are designed for corrugated cardboard that have the slits, and they're locked. So they prevent a lot of contamination. And they even mentioned that if we had any contamination to come out of the truck and was identified, that driver would put it back on the truck. And I'm talking about clean and dry. And I did go to Waterville last Friday to meet with Casella to see their transfer station over there, to see their operation with my own eyes. I talked with their vice president, and we talked about all of this. And I said, if we were going to do this deal, there's no gift you're giving us. It's not as if you're being that nice. It's something that nothing is ever really free. So if you can guarantee on the back end that what you bring me, you buy from me, then maybe we can do something.
That's a great example.
That's
of
the only way you do it.
Sounds.
That's the only way it's done. I don't know why it's open-ended here, but in the industry, that's the only way it's done, especially now with the green fence. But I'm going to get all that changed. Let me move on to the last little part, because I'm dragging on. The biggest thing that of interest to the board tonight, I think, is the fact that we have addressed or are addressing the leachate issue. The fact that we have not been pumping leachate since July 23rd. Today, we had Brookside Plumbing, Mike Eaton and his crew come out with the assistance, by the way, of Camden's Public Works folks for confined space. And they went into the wet well that we have, vented it, did everything to get the gases out. had it where the men could be lowered in, and they connected the hose in that wet well and ran it over the ground, over the top of the ground, and it's run up to where the leachate pump is now. So it's over 100 feet of flex pipe, and everything is ready. So I've spoken with Frank Haggerty, the gentleman who gave us a quote, recall, to buy the new pump, which he says should deliver tomorrow or Friday.
Not 3 to 4 weeks.
Oh, no, no, that's how long it's been since we met, and you guys gave me the approval to proceed with the total 15,000, but we're still talking about the 10. So I didn't have to exceed that. Anyway, it's due to back. He put it on fast track. So he says he expects to have it delivered to him tomorrow or Friday. Now, the only thing we need him to do now is come in and connect up to what has been done, connect the 2-inch pipe down into the well, bring it up, and then connect it to that pipe. And we're just going to temporarily pump it over the ground through that hose until we can actually set up for the permanent solution. And that is, we're going to actually bury a pipe in the ground 4 feet under the frost line, run it to that wet well 6 feet under, connect in, and that will be our permanent fix from now on. But what we wanted to do is have some breathing room because our levels are at 115 when they should be at 98 below.
Are you
I mean,
serious?
105, 105. 105. I'm thinking about the height of the berm. It's 105. And the thing is, board, is that the level has been very stable. It hasn't really been a margin between 6 feet or so and almost 2 months. So that's very good. And we're not even nearly close to breaching our underground berm, which I understand is at 113 feet. Yes, ma'am.
Brady, are we gonna then, with the ultimate fix, be able then to maintain the new pump as we had discussed at the Finance Committee and do the maintenance on it that should be being done?
Yes, ma'am. One thing I wanted to add about that is it's not necessarily that, well, it's not necessarily that you can do maintenance on the pump. Once it's in, it's designed to be in the ground for decades.
Okay.
And as long as it's pumping, you know it's working.
Okay.
It's really hard to go down 70 feet and pull it up to check it. But I did have on the bid that Haggerty put in there that he would actually have a connection to where if we needed to do that, if there was some issue, it would be easier to do it than what we have in place now. So that's the pump itself is only 8,000, but the additional work to do that, to make it more convenient for not just him, but for anyone we wanted to bid to do the work, to come in and there be connect, so to speak, that they could come in and do that instead of having to set up a rigging and
Right.
15 feet in the air. But I just wanted to assure you that we should be, Frank said he will call me in the morning to tell me whether or not he can get out here tomorrow or Friday. And if it's not, it would be next week. Now, today, we had the DEP out. We had, who is this? What's his name, Matt?
From Emery and Garrett?
Yes, they were out today. Yes. Mark Winstead from Emery and Garrett, the groundwater investigations, Lou Pazuzzi and his crew. You know, they were all out looking at what we were doing. They tested the wells that are over there beyond the berm going to Lily Pond, and all those samples are going to the lab, and we'll find out what they are. The level, we had the surveyor come out and do a benchmark, and we also tested the water level, so we're fine. Even to Monday or Tuesday, we're fine. As far as having to worry about levels going up from 105 to 113 or more. That's just an impossibility. So everything is in place, and we'll be pumping hopefully by this time next week. And that'll give us the breathing room to go ahead and have the engineers come in and do the permanent fix. So at least we'll be pumping the leachate. And just so the board knows is that in addition to that, it's my hope that we can set up a process to where in addition, it can serve double duty. It can pump the leachate and keep that level maintained below 98 feet. And if we needed to, we can put a manifold and a valve and turn off the valve and have it to use for fire prevention. So we can inject water into the landfill. and if wherever we identify hot spots. So all of that is something that we're going to work out as well, and I know exactly how to do that. And the people I've talked to said, all right, let's do it. So we're going to get that done as well. And that's, I think that concludes everything that I had in my report for tonight. Hope that was not too much.
No, that was great.
Not bad for the first 30 days.
Yeah.
Now, did the fire have anything to do with the failure of that?
Yes, and in fact, Mike, I'm glad you mentioned that. In addition to all of this, last week I met with an auditor from Colonial Insurance, because we have insurance, and today I met with an auditor from Travelers. And the Travelers auditor says that from everything he's seen and observed and what I've educated him on, he thinks we can get reimbursed for everything related to the pump and the fire. Because we made the point that what I was telling him is that pump that was in the ground is in the well gas is explosive, and it's in the ground, and that fire was around the well, and it may have heated that steel conduit and created some kind of pressure, and the well itself is inside. It's insulated inside that casing, which is 6 inches, but the well itself is only 2 inches. And even though it was 70 feet and partially submerged, that's where the fire was. I understand it blazed very hot. It took 1 million gallons of water to fight, plus several 100 tons of dirt. And it shifted the well and all that. So he understands that the failure of that pump may be due to the fact that that well gas may have ignited, but because it was in an anaerobic environment without air, it's possible that it pressurized, because when it came up, it's scorched. The wires are scorched, and part of the plastics are metal. If we can get reimbursed, and it's free to try, then everything will be paid for 100% after we satisfy our deductible.
It looked like you did get some. But and then you guys had quite a time getting the pipe got bent, right?
That's right. That's right. We had to cut part of the casing, all that. So between Colonial and Travelers, we may be able to get reimbursed for everything. And that also includes the fire in July for the water we paid Rockland, I think, Fire Department, to put it out there, because I'm sure we're charged for that water. I'm assuming.
No, that's the water company.
Oh, okay, so the fire department, when they pump the water through their trucks, they don't charge us for the 1 million gallons. That's
Well,
just,
the
they're just
water
fighting fire.
company does. The fire department, it's at their discretion.
Right.
They could send us a bill. They generally don't.
Well,
Main
everything
water.
related to what we're
But main
doing with
water is another
the
issue.
temporary fix, the purchase of the new pump, the permanent solution, all of that is reimbursable.
Nice.
And he feels that the underwriters, what he's looking at is that they don't really know. He doesn't know. He's out here to investigate. So I had to give him landfill 101 real quick. And now he went away very clearly understanding the significance of the event, the impact it's having on us, about the fact that we are in non-compliance with the added height, and that we need to get this done. And he left making me feel very confident that he can get this done. I had to educate him so he'd know how to write it up to get it done, because I'm the one that they consider the expert on the pump and what's going on. So that's what we did. I think I got him sold to get it done. If we can do that, then that would be great.
Good job.
All right.
All right, we'll move on to item L, the Strategic and Capital Planning Committee report. Anybody got anything on that?
We have,
I don't. We
Bob
haven't
and
really
Owen.
met.
we have not met.
We haven't met. We was gonna try and didn't happen, so nothing new there. Finance Committee update, anybody?
Oh, yeah.
Let's see, sorry, before we move off of the Strategic and Capital
Yeah.
Planning Committee, aren't you guys supposed to meet by October 31st or something like that per the bylaws? Does that ring a bell with you? Okay, well.
You must know more than we do, I don't know.
Well, I'll just
It's
tell you.
amazing what you can find in
You
there.
know, because I told you we were looking at
Yeah.
bylaws and all that stuff again, and I think here, because I made a note of it, that, just to, a little deadline here. Capital Strategic Planning Committee is supposed to develop the annual capital improvement plan for the succeeding budget with recommendations to the board no later than October 1st annually. and propose a 5-year capital strategic plan no later than September 1st of each calendar year.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, okay, well, that's
All right,
the governance committee at work.
I guess we gotta have a meeting. Well, that's the first I've ever heard of that, so good
Okay.
job.
Well, on both of them. I missed most of the governance committee today. No, we haven't met.
No, we'll have to get on it, make it happen.
Now I butt in and add another little thing,
Sure.
to this, just for the hell of it. You guys won't let me play here anymore, I'm bringing up too many bad subjects. My other thing on the other clipboard, that's all I can remember, I think. I would really like if we could, at our next meeting, everybody bring our little yearly calendars with us, and I think it would be wonderful if we could set monthly or bi-monthly, when we decide to go bi-monthly, I figure we could pull that off, but for right now, monthly dates as to when all the various committees are going to meet and can come up, and write them down for the year, and then if we don't need to meet, we can always cancel it.
Yeah.
But this trying to get on the phone and
Yeah.
get people together and try to create a meeting,
Yeah.
to say nothing about the fact that we're supposed to give the news media and all these things a certain amount of heads up on when we're
Right.
doing these things.
Yeah.
I mean, we talk about it, but it doesn't
Do we have to
happen.
do that for the committees?
I don't
When we
think
do
the
the committee,
committees
we don't
do.
need to.
I don't think.
That's not a public thing, no.
But, I mean,
I mean, it is technically a public thing.
We don't have to
But
be
it's-
notified, do we?
Advertised.
No, it's not.
I mean,
advertised.
I think technically, if you really wanted to get technical about it, I mean, putting it on a
I
calendar.
thought the committee is just like, I
It's
mean,
just
you don't
like,
want,
it feels very, I think we're supposed to at least let the board know.
It should be, and it
I mean,
should be.
it should be,
look at
it
the
is,
governance.
it is,
should be on
it
the
is
calendar.
public, but
Right.
so the board members could come, but we really don't want to invite outside people to the
Well, I mean,
committee.
they're
they
entitled to.
are entitled to be there. The chances,
I'll retract that part of it, but it was at least so that all the committee members could show up.
Well, no,
and
you have
board
a good
members would
point,
know
because I
about
was
it.
wondering, I wondered
but
that.
it's just,
'cause
we
I thought
just
the
can't,
committee
we
was-
just can't get that done. I mean, we could, I think maybe we could, if Dave,
I
Dave's.
like his idea. I
We
think
should do that, and then we should just put it on the
The next
calendars.
meeting.
You know, it should,
Oh,
At
and
the-
if you're
at the very
watching-
least,
Town
you've got an
calendars.
outline, and if
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 out of 5 can't make it, or if one idiot,
Well,
Lincoln
then
Bill can't make it, you know, at least you know, and someone can reach out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right, right. And if we get it on the agenda, on our calendars now for the future, then we'll work around it, work around other meetings. I
Yeah.
mean,
I only remembered because
Definitely.
the
I mean,
finance
that's
committee
what
was
we've been
going
trying to
on.
do, but everybody gets so busy. I know the strategic planning,
So this-
we said
this
we
is
was gonna
be
meet
set up
that
Yes.
Monday. but-
on
yeah.
October's meeting, this will be
Yes.
one of the agenda items.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Thank you.
and somebody should make sure we really do it. It's going to be hard,
well, it
but,
needs to be on the
Yeah.
agenda, and if Owen's
On the
watching-
agenda.
I mean, look at, there's a majority
But
of
Owen's
the
one.
board here saying.
you know what, we also just lost our
Agenda.
technical
we don't have
quorum.
a chair?
We don't have any,
We lost our, so we're not supposed to be having a meeting anymore,
no,
which
no,
is,
no, that's not that. It's, we can't take votes. We don't have a quorum to take votes, but we can still have a meeting.
okay. Is that what it says?
I think that's right, yes.
We don't have
It
a
is
chair for the
tonight, 'cause
strategic
nobody's here to
planning?
tell us it's
Any
wrong.
board can still
you
meet
were.
even though you don't have a quorum, you just
Chair
can't.
for the
Take
strategic
a vote.
planning
You can't take
committee.
official action. You heard it right here from your town.
We haven't,
I decided
Owen told us that we needed to select somebody as a chair, but we haven't met to do that.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't, and it doesn't say in the bylaws who the chair has to be if the strategic and capital planner?
No.
Because that's how I ended up having to be chair of finance, because it said, and Dave,
Yeah,
and you're
that's how I
the
got to be
personnel.
He went on one board and found out he was chair of another because
Right, what's amazing, when you start reading those bylaws, it's like,
It's amazing what you find
Lock
out.
you in.
Well, I'll tell you
they were
right
really,
now,
it's Bill, what's his name?
there's nothing on
Chapman
here about
was
who the chair
Not
would
messing
be.
around.
Okay.
Wow, that's a lot of freedom for that committee. It's kind of nice.
Well, the reason with you, I mean,
It makes sense with the treasurer, it makes sense.
well, it has to be, the treasurer can only be a director, and that's the person who should be, the
Chair of the
finance committee.
Right, but then when you say, oh, it's just, all you have to do is sign the warrants, and then, You read that? No, it's fine. I mean, I'm learning, it's not my particular strength in life, finances, but I'm learning a lot.
So aren't we on to the finance committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, now.
We
Yeah,
are.
Go to item J. The Finance
of-
Committee.
File this under things I never wished to be when I was in fourth grade, and, Allison's strengths do not lie in this particular area, but, okay. So we have, I'm also not the greatest at doing minutes, but rose to the occasion here, and these are the minutes which I passed out from, that's just from, the process as outlined in the bylaws is that purchases over $5,000 need to be approved by the Finance Committee. Actually, it says reviewed by the Finance Committee and approved by the board. Now, in cases such as a failing leachate pump that all of a sudden needs to be approved, needs to be purchased, it would not, the practice has most certainly not been for it to come as a review by the Finance Committee and then approval by the board, because we needed to, it was an emergency expenditure. And there is a larger governance issue brought up by this, because we're trying harder to follow exactly what it says in the bylaws. And so, okay, the purchasing policy, it doesn't say that everything has to go out to bid. It doesn't, because it recognizes that a lot of this stuff is a sole source kind of thing. And so the protection that was put in place by the people that came up with the bylaws was that it should be reviewed by the Finance Committee. And I think that works pretty well for the most part. But I realize that what we have been doing is not necessarily then bringing it back to the board. And so the governance committee should look at that.
As an emergency.
And there should be times when, if every expenditure over $5,000 ends up having to be, or every purchase over $5,000 goes first to the Finance Committee and then to the board, I don't believe that's the intention of it, because that's really slow and the manager needs to have some discretion. I think that it's also probably how we got ourselves into the situation where the equipment replacement fund was sometimes used without, I think a previous board at one point may have given the manager authorization to spend out of that reserve fund, whereas normally all expenditures from reserve funds, at least for what I'm familiar with select board processes, is that takes a vote of the board. But you're dealing with a lot in a board that only meets once a month, and some emergency situations that come up or just fairly urgent. I don't see a mechanism in our bylaws as they are right now for discretion in that area, and I think we should look at that in the future, because
There's no clause for emergency situation.
no, just as there's no clause for emergency meetings, but we've been doing that anyway. So and sometimes it's just the way it works. Everybody just does the best they can, and we all agree. But it's something that should be looked at, and
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Do we actually have a purchasing policy?
No, the purchase, not to my knowledge, best of my knowledge, it's only
Just the
what we have in the bylaws and the interlocal. We'll put that on the list of things to
Can
investigate,
you,
but
can you find it and provide it to the governance committee if we have one?
I will double check. I thought Carol Sue has, you know what it is, Phil, for capital expenditures, sorry. It is not a purchasing policy,
so,
only for capital.
So, that's a real problem. We need to have a purchasing policy. And, I think that falls under the governance committee. We'll work with Parity.
Yes, if I had a fire and needed a centrifugal pump to pump water out of the south quarry to treat the north for fire, I need to rent it, I need to get it, it's a fire, we need to respond.
Yeah,
If
there
all
should be a
that
clause for
is over
emergency.
$5,000,
Run into some, like with the fire, you actually ran into some
Yes.
big money.
we could also set up the budget a little bit differently, so that we do have lines for those things, so it goes into the budget as a a line item that the manager is able to spend out
Right, well,
of.
you do need a purchasing policy if we don't even have one, because, that's probably why
Well, we do in some way, some of it is worked into the
Right, the
bylaws.
$5,000 thing.
Yeah, 5,000, that's about it. That's in the bylaws.
But that's actually very stringent,
Watch it on TV.
so. Hear my voice. Cringe, makes me cringe. Okay, so the, in the Finance Committee, and you can read all about it, but Ben Buriti really gave more of an update. So this is more like the backstory to the behind the scenes, but it slowed things down because poor Buriti's like writing, I was like, then the Finance Committee get together, I've got this situation, and, you know, it slows.
The level's going up.
There are good and bad parts of that process. So the other thing that we did, we don't have the written minutes yet, but we met with Camden National Wealth Management, and they provided us with a PowerPoint, well, a printed out PowerPoint, sort of detailing the markets and the trends, and this is how much money in our closure reserve fund. We asked we went over the IPS and reviewed the nature of our organization and the research that was done by Greg Ime, the attorney that we hired to clarify for sure what kind of a corporation we are. That was, we had, the initial IPS had assumed that we had to abide by the most conservative of municipal rules. So the update from Greg Ime really was that, yes, that's what you need to do. So that didn't require any changing. It was, we kind of hoped maybe we would learn that you could be a little bit more liberal or whatever, but that was not the case. The corporation, because it's made up of municipalities, by joining into a municipal corporation, we don't have any, it doesn't give us any additional powers that the municipalities don't already have. So I asked them to provide us with a digital version of the report that was presented to the committee. They're going to do that, and we'll get minutes also from that meeting out to the rest of the board, and we can make. We did set our next meeting, I think at least for the first year, we said we were going to meet
January?
Quarterly, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The Finance Committee was going to meet quarterly.
With them.
With them, right. It may be appropriate for at least an annual meeting with the full board, I think, to provide a presentation if that's something that the board decides that we want to do. Another thing that was discussed was we have what's invested with them right now is the closure reserve fund that is held by Midco Solid Waste. Now,
Could you say how much that is? I think it's about 1.6 million, was it? It's invested?
I think it's less. I don't know, it might be that.
And didn't we earn, in the last few months that it's been invested, didn't we earn about $16,000 in interest on it, which is a lot better than we were doing
Yeah,
when
so
money
it's-
was sitting
Oh,
in
yeah.
a savings account,
Right.
right? So anyway, I just wanted to give that
Yes,
heads up.
that's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
important point.
All right, sorry.
And so that's the money that Midco Solid Waste has. Now, it does not include, of course, the money that all the four towns have in our own little accounts. And they asked us, well, is there a time when that's going to be, each of the four towns is going to send that money back to Midco Solid Waste? And, we all kind of looked at each other like, yeah, maybe. We all have different, we've been talking about it for a while. One thing that they brought up, which seemed to be an excellent suggestion, was that they would be able to set up sub-accounts. So if there is concern about, one town doesn't want to give it back to Midco Solid Waste until we get rid of the weighted vote, or until we have a policy about exactly what constitutes a landfill closure expense, or this or that. And it's difficult if all of the towns don't agree to do the same thing, then we create this issue with the interest and calculating whose is whose. But they would be able to set up, if there's a town that says, you know what, we're not so sure we want to just send this back to be thrown in the whole big Midcoast Solid Waste Reserve, landfill closure reserve fund, but we do want to reap the benefits of investing it at this, rate that we've all kind of decided. There could be a sub-account that was the Hope account and the Camden account and the Rockport account. So we could, each as towns individually, the towns could retain control over that, and we would avoid some of the it wouldn't be under that sub-account wouldn't be under, or however they set it up, it wouldn't be under the control of the Midco Solid Waste Board, it would remain, but then you'd know you have your, your landfill closure. So that's something that we can talk about further if there's interest. I liked the idea because it would,
And it could be done by an individual town, like Rockport could decide to set up a sub-account, and if Hope wants to hang on to their perk funds, then they can do that. So we don't have to all agree anymore.
right, each account would generate interest individually.
Yeah.
Because we have investment policies and we have investments that we already
Right.
engage in, so that would
Don't
be
let you
one.
do that?
The sub-accounts, sub-accounts with Camden National with our.
So we're the parent, and then underneath, other
Yep.
people
They
that
might,
are
it might not be, a
named-
sub-account might not be the right, because then it would.
They call them sub-accounts.
They did call them sub-accounts, but I think the intention would be to maintain, there are a variety of, basically there are a variety of ways it could be set up so that,
So I wonder if it's, as a group, you can reap the more benefits than you could as one,
On your own, yeah.
but yet,
Potentially, maybe.
but yet, you're one, you're a sub-account, and you're actually getting more because you're in there with somebody else or another town, but yet it's different towns, it's not just Midco Solid Waste.
And I bet our auditor would like that, because then there's no confusion about, anyway. I don't
it would be
know.
easier for the auditor to see that the money's there, but the auditor's also comfortable with, like the type of process that Lincolnville followed with the, so,
So she said she could give us more information on that. I
Right.
mean, it wasn't a topic for that particular meeting. She can give us more information on it. We should seek more information.
Right, I think we
on it.
should, and-
And then bring it back to here so that we can share it with our individual towns, and then individual towns can make the determination as if that's the way they want to go.
because, so, the statute also, in terms of what regulates how aggressively or not so aggressively we can invest, there are certainly rules because we're a municipality and we have to abide by those rules. But there is some, what's not clear is that, I think for the purpose of this group, we were very clear that we wanted Camden National to be really the most conservative, that, because we didn't have time to get into, well, is there a gray area here where we could maybe get a little bit more, reap a little bit more rewards, or we were more like, just make sure we don't break any laws, just be absolutely sure, and really, we want to be, and now, for example, so Bob was at our meeting also, and he has more knowledge of just investments, and he says, I don't believe, he was saying, I don't believe that the statute actually requires that we do this versus this, and I think we could get 1% more this way or that way. And that might be something, and I looking at the statute, it does seem there is a little bit of wiggle room. Now, that might be a reason why it's not a particular interest of mine, but for Camden, it might be, Bob thinks, oh no, I want to keep it over here because I think we can do a better job with our, but if we have to make it all the decisions together, it's, so that there are reasons maybe to, even though we're going to definitely designate it for landfill closure, it's understandable that different towns may have different philosophies about, maybe they don't want to invest in, I think there's a government bond that's, or there's an Apple, is one of the things. And, if we all, maybe Rockport is like, no, we already decided we'll never invest in Apple and we don't want any of our Midco Solid Waste funds involved in that either. You could do something a little different. So we could talk about this until the cows come home. But if anybody wants to,
There's a percentage, right? It feels like you can only invest so much in the high risk.
Right.
I mean, and basically,
yeah,
this corporation is under the same as your town.
Exactly.
It is under the same restrictions as the investment policies for municipalities. But I'm wondering if maybe what we should do is see if the Camden National Wealth Management people could have somebody come and talk to us at one of our future meetings here, because then instead of us having to play middleman, us meeting with them and then coming back here, why don't we just have them come and talk just about the sub-accounts?
About this issue, because, right, there are things that we can just report back on, and then there are things where I start talking in circles, and I'm like, well, maybe.
Add that right
Why don't
after
you-
I add all the committees to
Oh,
a
good,
calendar.
Good.
Get that
Did you like that, Aaron? Did you hear that?
only 3 times.
I can't be here for the November meeting, because, I'll tell you later, but if we could have them at a time other than
Okay,
November.
so-
I
Okay.
did have that financing, but I couldn't remember. I know Camden National was there, but, yeah.
Budget.
Yes, I was waiting for the dust to settle.
Why is it just you?
Well, that's a great point. We did have another one. We're not going to vote on anything.
You don't have a quorum.
Very disappointed in our managers today.
Well, we might have to be here for forever, because we can't vote to adjourn, but.
I get a free
Yeah, right.
mattress at the end of the year.
Be an open-ended meeting.
Disposal for showing up at the most.
Problem in your theory there. We couldn't
If somebody's calling out for breakfast.
Someone's got to call Marcy.
Okay, so the next finance committee item is, of course, the audit is ongoing. I will admit that it has been difficult for me to keep up with. We're feeling a little bit like maybe the finance committee has a number of responsibilities in the bylaws that are a little bit hard to keep up with sometimes, depending on what's going on. So I'm playing phone tag with Erica right now, the audit person for RHR. She has a few questions. There's a lot of work that's already just been done with staff, but yeah, that's ongoing, and we're working out a few issues. Definitely one of them, a few of them being this issue with whether or not we really were operating end of the year with a loss, because if some of it, this whole accrual or non-accrual or partial accrual accounting, and the idea that we can't deposit any money into, if a hauler has a $60,000 outstanding balance at the end of the fiscal year, and you get to June 16th or whenever it is, and to say, oh, well, we can't apply that to last year's budget if the money comes in the day after, that's, I don't believe that's accurate, because it says in our audit that we are on the accrual-based system. So it's
Some of those checks that came in, we think that we could have accrued and should be credited to the last fiscal year. If that's the case, then maybe we're not operating at a loss. And plus the fact that
we need to go back and take into account, some of these things could have come from the reserves, and
the finance committee approved certain things based on the fact that we had healthy reserves from which those equipment, repairs and everything could be taken. And yet that had to be reported to the board, and the board make a recommendation to apply those reserves, and that hasn't been done. So there's some really serious,
and the audit kind of got off to they tried to get it done early because of we like to use the audited fund balances for our budget, of course, for the budget for this next coming year, but the audit kind of got started. I think it was maybe, the executive committee was really feeling, I don't know.
The auditors schedule it all,
Yeah, so it's
and they just start.
seems.
And the first thing they
but
do is.
don't they have to get information in order
Yeah,
to
the
start?
first thing they do is just field work. So it's really just a data dump from.
But I feel like the data dump shouldn't have happened, but that's,
I wanted to do it in November, start in November. So
well, that might have been,
that's
anyway,
too
the
late.
data dump, I feel like should have happened after we're kind of rehashing a little bit from the same, from last month, so we won't belabor it too much. But there's also other things for the audit that they just have questions with, like, has the board, rolling together fund balances, and does it make sense? We have a landfill reserve fund, for example, that's not a landfill development reserve. that just kind of hasn't been touched for a while. Should that be, should that be rolled to, the board would have to make some decisions on a few things there. So she has a whole list of questions that Jody has been responding to some of them. I've been responding to some of them. And then the latest was some of this there are some things I want to talk to you about that I don't feel like we can just go over with this list of questions. So let's schedule a phone call. But, one of the other things is that came up in looking at what they have as the fund balances at this point is that the money that came back from the put option, so 3 out of the 4 towns voted to send that money back to Midco Solid Waste for the landfill closure. But, and this was a question that came up during our Camden National Wealth Management meeting was, hold on, is that put money in the landfill closure fund? Because if it is, it creates a problem because we only had 3 towns doing it.
I thought all 4 towns.
I was going to say that all 4 towns got the money.
No, with the put option, that was, only 3 towns.
That was I thought the put option was the smaller.
That was.
But it was sent out to the
I
town.
thought all 4 towns did that.
And all 4 towns
And it
got
was
the
the
check.
larger, it was the second one.
But Hope didn't vote to send it back.
That's right.
I
So-
thought all the other towns kept the money too.
No, we all kept the money from the second round of disbursements.
Oh, the
Well, actually,
first-
there were 3 rounds of disbursements.
First one,
Tip
The
stabilization.
tip fee stabilization is the big one. That's, Camden was like 400 and something. But we did, the thing that went out to all the 4 towns at town meeting, I promise you. And it was,
Just seems like a big thing for me to forget. I mean, I forget a lot of stuff.
you wanted to use it, the plan was to use this as the groundwork to
Yeah.
convince all the towns to give their big, when they got their big check, to have it go back to Midco Solid Waste. And there were 2 questions on the town meeting warrant for the towns that agreed. One was, do you agree to the put option? And then the next one was, do you agree to send the money back for a landfill closure reserve, blah, 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 blah. And 3 out of the 4, all 4 towns voted yes to the put option, but only 3 of us voted to send that money back to Midco Solid Waste. I actually think Hope, I agreed with Hope at the time. I thought we all, but that's neither
I
here nor
thought
there.
that's what ended up happening once we got, because if we didn't all do it, it was going to cause a problem on investment down the road, so.
Exactly.
I just,
There was a compelling argument to
Maybe it
do it
was.
perhaps, but we did. So right now, to answer the question from Camden National
Yeah.
Wealth Management, that money, that put option money is still sitting in its own account. It didn't get put into landfill closure reserve. So that is also not only, it's not being invested.
Maybe it could be invested in sub-accounts for the
We may have to,
towns
should throw that one into a
return their
sub-account and
money.
then we can, right. So it does get very complicated when it's either all the towns should keep their money or all the towns should pool it, but now, anyway, that's the put option, that's going to be an agenda item, if somebody can take a note on things that might need to be voted on in a future meeting.
I don't remember. I know there was an issue because we talked about putting it in a reserve account and making sure that it couldn't be touched even by other boards and that kind of thing. I don't think any of that ever happened to it. That was one reason why Hope didn't jump on board, if I remember right.
Well, we didn't have even an account to put it into.
It was
that
totally reasonable at the
segregated it,
time,
and
I
then
think,
it was
not giving
having
it
a
back.
financial management policy that
So we
kind of
never did,
spelled
yeah.
out, could and could not.
At the time, they were saying, all this money that comes back, maybe we can use it to redesign the transfer station, and there was a lot of that. Since there wasn't a clear policy about
Right.
this is exactly what is going to happen, I think.
Right, but I know we talked
Had a
about doing that,
reasonable
and it
fear.
must have never
We have
happened.
that policy, right? And then the money's invested. I mean, we
We
have
have
that
an
policy.
investment policy. Whether or not we have a really clear policy on what constitutes a landfill closure expense,
Yeah, I think that's,
that one might be a next, add it to the list, Deb. And maybe that's as simple as saying, whatever the DEP says is a landfill closure expense, is a landfill closure expense. It's not,
Linking it to the schedule of compliance. some of the requirements in there. in terms of
Forever
closure.
pumping and the, I don't know if that's in the schedule of, yeah. Maybe we can write in our investment policy right into the,
See the schedule of compliance.
I'm like, oh no, don't combine two complicated documents. Okay, so that's that. And then the budget, the next, just quick concern,
Heads up for Brady.
heads up for Baridi. So the budget, it is often the case that in this board or this organization, the budget deadline comes up really fast because it doesn't, the requirement is to get it to the towns, the assessment to the towns, way ahead of their budget processes. So it ends up being a huge amount of planning ahead. So we need to have the final, the board needs to vote on the budget and to be able to have the assessments to the towns by December 31st.
I'm gonna say, isn't it in
Final
December?
budget.
The final budget.
And
That doesn't go into effect until the next June, so until,
Right, but in the last few years, that hasn't been happening, but.
well, right.
I wondered why it had to come in so early.
Yeah, it's
Well,
because
it
the
has to go to the
towns,
towns and then be voted on at the towns and that kind of thing, so.
And even though the bylaws say it's the finance committee who develops it, it's not, it's you.
the finance committee, reviews
Just wanted to make sure you knew that.
It will need to be reviewed for, the finance committee would be, you'd be taking bringing a draft budget to us that probably, you would want to assume like 2 meetings of the finance committee usually to go over the draft budget first in sort of a very like rough form or however you want to bring it to us first, I suppose. And then the finance committee will have a meeting where we'll actually vote and there'll be a column, it'll be manager's recommendation and then finance committee. And then that will all need to have happened before, the board meeting sometime before December 31st where we can, and sometimes it does take 2 board meetings or sometimes
7.
depending on the quality, I suppose, of the process that came before it or a variety of other things. So, we should be in touch about, let us know what we can do to support that process and, what you need to be able to, go about your first budget, so, yeah. And that's it for the finance committee.
Anything else on the government's committee, or did you,
No, I think I really,
with the spots earlier?
I did it real clear.
Just we'll move on to the financials then. Anybody want to go over that?
I have actually not looked at this. Did you notice anything, Baridi, that you would, well, one thing I would say, in looking at the, with all this pump stuff, so there was a period of time where we believed that the pump was running. And
You mean before, prior to July 23rd?
no, at our last board meeting, we were,
Oh, you mean the quirks where it was spurting?
Can you turn your mic on, please, Baridi?
maybe one of the things that we've noticed is that the bills from Camden, from the wastewater treatment plant, have not been, as low as we might hope. We're not seeing the gut project is supposed to, significantly reduce the amount of leachate that we have to pump. And there was a bit of time where we felt like, wow, it's definitely, what all the data that we're seeing is really showing that worked.
Yeah.
There has been a bit of a concern this year that it's like, whoa, it's kind of starting to go back up. And then, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, even the most recent, when we were discussing with the finance committee the pump purchase, even the Camden wastewater treatment plant thought that there was flow coming to them, which means that we were getting billed. And so that was after July 23rd, is where we think that the pump really stopped working. For some reason, and I think that's a flow rate that we report to them. Is that how that works? So because our pump, something was still,
Totalizer was still
We reported
working.
shut down, so it wasn't, because we knew it wasn't working.
but we didn't know that it was completely not working on July 23rd. Because at this board meeting last time, we were told that it was still it was turning on, it was turning off, and the major.
6 days that we thought it was running, otherwise it says shut down and they were paying for it. Which they had.
There's been, I think it's possible based on talking to Dave, and if some of this stuff, if the pump really wasn't running a lot, for the levels to be that high in the quarry, it just didn't really make sense with our billing. And it's something that should be followed up on to make sure that we weren't getting billed overbilled by the treatment plant.
No real change in the billing, when we think we know approximately when the.
And the flow rates that were reported, because when I talked to Dave, when we also, when we had our finance committee meeting, we also, to approve a pump purchase, we also called Dave Bolstridge, who because it just felt like, okay, had been here before at our meeting talking about upgrades to the pump and, or to the SCADA system. And so he said, oh, well, I thought, they had reported flow, and so I thought they had gotten the pump up and running. And I was like, oh, no, and maybe that's already all been straightened out, but it seemed from the conversation I was having with him, it was like, no, I've heard the pump is completely not running, and he was saying, well, it looks like flow has been reported. It's just a note that it's a huge amount of money, and so we should make sure that it's adequately.
I spoke with Dave about this as well, and
Oh.
he recommended that we have somebody check the meter. He thinks the problem could be with the meter.
The meter is running.
Yes, and there is a problem with the meter.
Oh,
It's broken.
so I'm,
Well, there.
right. So,
I can call Dave tomorrow.
so we're going to need to go back and audit
There's
that.
actually a flow meter at the facility.
Yes, there's a totalizer.
Well,
and
he did say for the majority of the summer, there was no flow at all.
Oh, okay, so he does know that,
Fairly
okay.
recent.
Yes.
Like, very recent. I would say only a portion of July and maybe
Right.
some of August.
Okay, well, sounds like there is a problem. Look,
Please report monthly,
Thank you.
not daily or weekly, it's monthly, and then we get quarterly bills. So we have not received our quarterly bill yet.
I know, but when I talk to them about, they can provide more up to date than quarterly. You can call them and they'll send over what they. I mean, I don't know why we'd be getting defended. I hear the meter is broken, so there is and
That's how
some.
we all figured out the pump wasn't working, so,
Discrepancy, yeah.
yeah. The meter was running, but it
Also,
wasn't working.
we've got to, sort of, everyone here's got to factor in that we're raising our rates.
Oh, that's
So, I mean,
But I do think there's a we should just make sure that we haven't been billed more than,
Oh, yeah.
because we're about to, speaking of which, we're about to pay a lot more. Camden is,
Water bill is what?
yeah, you're right, we should say that.
Wastewater bill.
we should.
So there's going to be a significant rate increase for the
yes.
wastewater treatment.
I mean, I don't know, because that's a different thing, but
We'll get on it.
usually that's
I'll wait
how
until.
it's.
Because you're getting the deal of the century now. No,
Yes, you are well,
we need to
Yeah.
upgrade our plant. It's going to be like a $15.1 million
On the
upgrade.
news, that's being paid for. That was on the news tonight, honey.
Was it?
Millions of dollars, oh, yeah.
Only 1.4
They
million.
reported it wrong.
loan.
1.4 million in grants, and then the rest is a loan.
You switched over to Jeopardy when they told you who's paying.
We are getting some grant funding.
Different billings, we could get more money.
What's that?
Sorry, I didn't mean to change the subject.
It lightened things up. It was not great news. It's,
So Well, anyway, but we did, yeah.
Because now we're like, there might be a broken meter and Camden's going to charge you more for.
You're welcome.
Own the ticker that is broken in question, or does the town of Camden own that as part of their treatment facility
No,
stuff?
we should own that.
Let's add that to the list of things to be investigated offline, maybe, just because I
I
know.
was just curious who pays to figure out how broken it is.
Set, because it'll go up to, 99999.
I would think it'd be us.
Water department, and I mean, the wastewater
Wastewater.
department, and they come and reset it.
Okay, so the bottom line is you guys are going to check into it, make sure that we're not being overcharged by Camden for water. or for
And we're
wastewater.
about to start very.
Don't be surprised.
Right.
The bills are going to go up. I mean, it's inevitable.
Bills are going to go up, but I want it to be for the right reasons.
Right.
And, I don't want Camden to be able to take advantage of. See, this is an area where there's a bit of a conflict of interest. Part of me is happy that, let's just let Midco Solid Waste keep spending money in Camden. But
Always be our cash cow.
But that is a term that gets thrown around in Camden, and so, but the bigger part of me, the fiduciary duty to the corporation wants me to make sure that we're not being taken advantage of by Camden, which I think is a reasonable concern.
That Dave Bolstridge
that-
guy.
Yeah.
And if
So-
the fiduciary part of you doesn't shine through, then the other three of us will make sure that it does. Me, and
Yes.
Coke, and Lincolnville, and Rockport.
I'm always quick to point out problems in Camden, so you don't have to. Okay, so that's that, but I don't have anything to say about this. I don't know if anybody
We're all
else.
set with the finance, but there is one other thing that we didn't touch base on.
Oh, shoot.
Is somebody has approached us about permission for bow hunting. And there's no policy or nothing, and do we want to actually take the liability?
Different person
for-
than currently has a tree stand.
And the one that has a tree stand there never asked for permission, I understand.
Yes, that's just been found.
Yes, and I've called and left a voicemail on his to tell him that it's not prohibited.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure you know his name.
Eric.
Eric. And here's, all I really wanted to do was get a sense from the members present. Is it something that we even want to explore? There's a potential that we would find out that we're not even allowed to do it because of maybe how we're classified or who owns the land or whatever. But if we were allowed to have expanded archery, no firearms, just
What could possibly go
bow
wrong?
hunting on the facility, I'd be a big fan, but I'm only one.
No, I don't know his last name, yes.
That they don't want,
Yeah,
concerned
you-
last year about.
You do not
Want it
you
back?
do not want it.
No.
See, because I looked up, like, the main, hunting laws is they have to have the owner's permission. I don't believe that the town of Rockport has a policy on it, I don't believe, as far as hunting or
We're
anything,
the
so.
owners, right?
Well,
There-
Midco Solid
there
Waste would be
does
the
have
owner,
to
but
be-
in Camden, I know we have like no discharge zones in
Right,
Camden, I don't
because we've
know.
got expanded, this expanded,
I don't think, maybe,
There does
yeah.
have to be landowner
Our
permission.
facility manager is recommending that we
Yes,
don't do
and
this.
and these are not the bow and arrows from Robin Hood's day.
yeah,
These things,
they're allowed to travel all the way up.
yes, and there's, in my experience, it's never been allowed on a state permitted facility, any type of, any of that, because it's too big of a liability. Because now, Midcoast now has to say that we have to ensure that whoever that individual is acting responsibly. And if they are not, once we said it was okay, then that means we've taken over their full liability of what they do. They can burn the place down, they could kill somebody,
You
injure,
may have an arrow in
anything.
your heart.
Well, what I'm saying is, the
Key surprise
bows that they
inspection.
use to hunt deer now will go straight through a 6-inch, 6-foot tree
Travel.
trunk.
Oh, my
It's not the little bows. I mean, these things are high powered.
Like you said, they can be over on
And,
Bully Pond
and as it travels 1,000 feet, because he missed the deer, it goes through my neck, then I don't even know where it came from. Yeah, I don't want anybody out there hunting on the property.
So-
It's not that big. That's just my opinion,
I feel
but the
that.
board makes the call.
Scenario really fast.
I feel our manager makes a very good point. For clarification, I think I would call a game warden, show them what's going on, ask them what they think, but you have some very good points there. It's a state permitted,
Yes, facility. You'd have to determine,
We own
is Midcoast landfill a hunting reserve or is it a landfill and transfer station?
It's owned by this corporation of
Yes.
which we're the board of directors, and we
Right.
just say
Is-
no.
Is hunting?
We don't need a
Yes.
game warden.
Yeah.
We just
No,
say
I'm just saying,
no.
is hunting
It
part
says
of
right in the law that
our
the
responsibility
owner's
that we
permission.
have recreational hunting on our property, or we're just there for
No,
transfer
I mean,
and
that just-
landfilling and
We just take a
recycling?
vote, so,
Right.
you know, we just,
I think,
we know
Because
what our manager's gonna do.
I can't
Paul, we agree
I
with
can't
the
supervise that. I don't have the personnel or time. And, you know, and at the
we're all in
discretion
agreement.
of people who are unknowns to me, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how many people in their group. I don't know what they're using.
We are informed to take a vote, Brady.
We're all in agreement with you,
but
so.
We support our
Rare time where I agree with a liability concern.
Not all in agreement.
Can we go to the snow ball and hunt?
We don't own that.
Or the cemetery?
Thank you, Beth.
Come up to Hope and use our shooting range
You know, some people need to stop the freeze.
We can put a sign up at Midco Solid Waste directing them to Hope.
hunting.
We
Like-
have a mission statement in our interlocal agreement and in our bylaws, and nowhere does it talk about hunting or,
Nobody
or
does.
snowmobiling.
Other recreational pursuits, not on our property. It's all recreational.
We can adjourn this meeting or no?
I move to adjourn.
Second,
Second, oh, sorry.
ha, I'm in there.
All right. Yay.
Vote on it.
This is an
You make
illegal
the
vote.
motion, right?
Let the record state,
Adjourning it.
Unanimous?
Yeah, well, I don't think we can vote on it.
cruel thing for a town manager to do, to come and then leave.
There's not enough,
You're so close.
Yeah, yeah.
I really wanted to hear you give a passionate argument to your neighbor.
Yeah. Yeah. 8:45.
Stomped on by anti.
Thank you.
I'm not anti.
I can just fix that going bad though. Stray arrow taking somebody else.